Hey, here we are. It's Boles.tv. Hey, it's Boles.television coming to you live and in concert from the east coast of these United States. It's high noon, and it's cold today. My goodness, it's been like 60, 70. Today, it's 30. That's pretty cold. But it looks like it's a beautiful day, and I did have the windows open briefly to get a little bit of fresh air in. And that's always important, especially when you're in a high rise. And we do have central air, I guess, but it's always good to get a little outside air coming in, if you know what I mean. So many good things, interesting things to talk about today. A lot of things going on in the world. And one of them is a wonderful Halloween story that I'm about to share with you now. And it does relate to our most beautiful Janna Marie Sweetheart. So it was Halloween. And in New York, New Jersey, people on the trains, if you're fun, you wear a little Halloween outfit. And when we were last seen here live with you, this is what I was wearing. Now, this was hair stuff, right? Yeah. Ooh, I like that. That's even closer. It's hair stuff. Oh, that's weird. Missed a few spots. And it looks really great. And I didn't have, my costume didn't arrive in time. So I just decided to use the hair goop on my face and scare myself and do a live show. And that's what I did. So this all sort of just dried. I discovered that when you clump it, you know, like the old 60s, 70s painters, it looks better. When you go thin, you can see I started on my forehead. It doesn't quite look great, and you miss some spots, and the whole thing looks weird. But when you concentrate and you put stuff on your nose and out here, yeah, and you don't shave a little bit, everything sticks and kind of sticks out. So this was easy to remove from my hair. You just wash your hair and it comes right out. The face was a little harder, not as cooperative, and especially in the eyeball area. My Janna Marie Sweetheart kept saying, you know, you have something all day yesterday. You have something near your eye. I don't know what it is. I said, it's paint, and I can't get it off. This morning in the shower, I got it off. So that's good news. And I'm looking, you know, my usual, dapper self. Oh, and I did it again. I forgot to turn on the lights. So when I do that, then I put this up so you can't see the terrible situations I put myself in to turn my lights on. But I'll leave the microphone on so you can hear me moving around and creating a scene in the most positive way possible. We hope. We don't know because we just started. But there's nothing like being ill-prepared for a live show, right? It's not like you have anything else to do. And we're back, and hey, let there be light. And there's light. Now we have light here, right? Okay, there we have green lights. There are 9 different sorts of flashing patterns on the green lights. And I always try to use different ones. Sometimes it flashes a lot and it's like uncomfortable to look at. Sometimes it's very slow and you think it's not on, like today. And my purple lights and my amber lights over here. So that is what happened this morning. It got all the paint off my face. I'm looking very beautiful. And here's my Halloween story about Janna Marie. So, I was dressed as I said, Starman. And, you know, I sent that horror picture to Janna, and she, you know, was showing it to her friends. And they said, well, what is he? What do you mean? Well, what do you mean what he is? He's Starman. And her friends would say, well, what's a Starman? You know, because I guess some people think you have to be something on Halloween. I am a character. I am in this box. This is what I am. This is what I believe. When sometimes you just, you know, paint your face and you're silly. And you call yourself Starman. Or Famous Man. Depending on how you decide to sign it in American Sign Language. So anyway, Janna is dressed up for Halloween. And she has a wonderful sort of poncho, and she's attached these 3D bats to her poncho top. Cute, right? It was cute. Wish I had a picture. I do have a picture somewhere, but I'm probably not allowed to show it. And she had a witch's hat. She did not have this special stuff in her hair, but I did that later when she came home. But she looked Halloweenish. And so she's on the train, sitting there, waiting for the train to leave. And it's busy in the morning rush. And because Janna Marie lives up to her street name of Janna Marie Sweetheart, when people who need help come into the train, the Janna Marie, more often than not, stands up and gives them her seat. If they're, hurt or injured or they don't look good and, they're looking around, where can I sit? There's no place to sit. I can't stand for the next 10 minutes. So she usually offers them her seat. So that happened on Halloween. And she's sitting there, on her phone or something. And this old woman comes in and has a cane and is stooped over and walking. And Janna sees the cane and looks up and says, okay, I know what I got to do. So Janna gets up, the good witch, and says, take my seat. And the old woman says, thank you very much. Something. Sits down. And Janna Marie's looking around because it's a big train car. And she finds an empty seat on the other side. So she goes and she sits. And she's looking around and said, oh, all these people are, some dressed in interesting things. And she's not taking pictures or anything. She's just, looking around. And then, she's looking at the old woman. And she does sort of a double take. Wait a minute. Is that really an old woman who can't walk? Or is that someone in a costume who just took my seat? So the train's moving, right? And Janna Marie's very discreet. She's not taking a picture or anything, but she's kind of, watching this behavior of this old woman. And she says, well, that's interesting. She has gray hair and like a bun on top and a cane and really saggy pantyhose down around her ankles, and wearing an old-fashioned dress, like a potato sack or something, I imagine. And she's watching and watching and trying to get a clue if she's been had or not. And they finally arrive. And Janna says to herself, well, I'm going to watch that old lady and see if she's really an old lady or if she's just in a costume. And, my kindness was taken over because she could have said, no, I'm not old with a cane. You stay in your seat, I'll stand. But she didn't say that. She said, thank you for the seat. Which reminds me of another story I'll tell you in a second. So Janna watches, and the old woman gets up off the seat in the train, grabs her cane, and sort of runs off the train. So it was all sort of, I guess we say, a very successful Halloween scam to get your seat. Pretend that you're old and you're sick, and a kind, nice person, like our Janna Marie Sweetheart, will give you her seat and regret it for the rest of the day. Now, before I continue on with my next Janna Marie Sweetheart story, I'm reminded of Howard Stein. And we're going to talk about him in a second. Who was my friend and a teacher at Columbia University in the city of New York. That's the official name of the school, by the way, if anybody asks you. It's not Columbia. You say, I go to Columbia, they think you mean Columbia, Missouri. You have to say Columbia University in the city of New York. It's on the stationery and everything. And Howard would tell this story repeatedly because after, 50 years, it still bothered him. He was on the subway, sitting down, just like Janna Marie Sweetheart. And this pregnant woman comes in. And he's, kind of looking around, wants to sit down. And because Howard is a very proper gentleman, always Jewish, raised in the faith, wants to do the right thing. He stands up and says, "Ma'am, please take my seat." And the pregnant woman, not faking, it wasn't Halloween, goes, sits down in Howard's seat, and he's holding onto the pole. And she looks up at him and says, "Sucker." And Howard just stood there, furious. When he tells the story, he yells at you. He's not yelling at you, he's yelling at the story. But every time he said the word sucker, it was with such venom that you knew he wanted to go back in time and not give up his seat to that woman. And those of us who were brave enough to, ask questions in the storm of the story is like, okay, she thinks you're a sucker, but you still did a nice thing. She was pregnant. You stood up and gave her your seat. It's okay. And we could say the same thing about Janna Marie Sweetheart. It's okay. You did the right thing. You saw a person you thought was having a hard time and you gave up your seat and they sat down and they suckered you. Howard would love that story if he were still alive because it's the same story, really. Now we tell part 2, and I have permission to tell these stories about Janna Marie Sweetheart. It was hard to get permission, but I got it. So on Halloween, she was at the store, and we were going to have just a little bit of wine to celebrate the day. And the best place to get really nice sort of wine is Trader Joe's. They have really cheap stuff. We love Trader Joe's. Some people don't because they say it's really just a fast food place that, doesn't sell fast food, but fast frozen food. Okay, it's delicious. What are you going to do about it? So she's buying this beautiful bottle of super cheap wine. I mean, like $8. Red Rooster, Rooster's Crest, something like that's the brand. And it's very cheap and surprisingly delicious. And she's in line to pay. And our beautiful Janna Marie Sweetheart in September just celebrated her 60th birthday. Okay? So, we're not saying she's old. I am very young. Now, we've been married for 35 years. And I am only 12 years old. So I am the child groom and, I guess, / boy toy. So anyway, Jen is in line, and she goes to Trader Joe's all the time, to buy stuff, not, just that, but to buy life-giving food. So she kind of knows people are around there. And the cashier, very friendly, says, "Ma'am, I need to see ID." Now, Janna Marie Sweetheart was not wearing any makeup. She had a nice shirt on, and she was like, whoa. And she was just there in and out. She didn't, have stuff with her and all of her ID on her. She had ID, but not, government ID, because you got to protect that in the big city, if you know what I mean, because people want to steal your identity. So I said, "Well, you mean my faculty ID? My work ID? Why you ask me for ID? I come in here all the time to buy food and every once in a while to have fun with my husband at night." And I said, "No, I need to see your driver's license." And Janna Marie Sweetheart, who never has a harsh word for anybody, except me, said to this person, "Are you kidding me? I look like I'm younger than 21?" And the cashier said, "Well, you want to talk to the manager?" And she said, "Yeah, I would, because I don't want to go all the way back and get my government ID and come back when I'm clearly an old woman." So the manager comes over and says, "You're asking for my ID, and I will take that as a compliment that I look younger than 21, but I just had my 60th birthday." And the manager said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. We've had, some trouble here with people in the past, so we just got." And Janet lifted up her hat and her hair and showed her. And showed her, said, "Look, I have gray hair. I'm 60 years old. My face is wrinkled. I'm not under 21. And the manager kind of looked at her and said, "Oh, okay." And said, "We've had problems in the past, so we just say card everybody," which is a very bizarre thing to say. And I know it's not a New York thing. I know it's not a New York State thing, a New York City thing. It's not any of that. It's just that I guess this particular Trader Joe is kind of in a university environment, a lot of young kids around, mulling around. I'm sure they think, "Hey, let's go to Trader Joe and see if we can, buy some really cheap wine and take it home, and they won't card us there because it's Trader Joe and they're laid back." But in the end, it all went really well. She got what she needed, and they didn't need her government ID because somehow she proved that she was really a very young old lady. And just for the record, this is my beautiful wife of 35 years. Now that's what you call a setup. This is my makeup job on her when she came home from all those experiences, giving up her chair and then getting carded as a 60-year-old at Trader Joe. So this was my gift to her. Painting her face. It's very chunky and very globby because I learned my lesson on my own face. We had to do this fast because she had to teach a Zoom class, and she wanted her to be scary and spooky for Zoom, and she was. And as you can see, this is the hair goop, color goop, that looks really good on your face. And when she was all done teaching and everything, she, went and washed it all off in 1 second. It was beautiful. She did not have the rings around her eyes that I had. And just because we like to be fair, usually, this is the actual and real Janna Marie Sweetheart. And she is older than 21 years old. Maybe she can use this picture. Or this picture to show Trader Joe that she is, in fact, a wonderful young woman of spirit and love and understanding who will give up her seat and then get carded for it later. That is my Janna Marie Sweetheart Halloween story for 20 and 23. And now we're going to take a very brief break. Okay, so hey, we are back from break. Thanks for being here on Boles TV. It's BOLES on television. Hey, it's Boles TV. I was looking for an image to show you, but I'll just show you what I have because you've already seen it. But it's sort of interesting from a criminal perspective. Whatever do you mean? I'll show it to you in a minute. Now, I just showed you this photograph of me, right? Okay, that was from Tuesday, Halloween. Now, I'm showing you this specifically because of my eyes. Now, I will ask you, what color are my eyes? Most people, when I was raised, I was told the color of my eyes were hazel, which is sort of like a mixture of green and a light brown. And then people tell me, "Oh, your eyes are blue." And as you can see right here, I wear contacts, and the contacts have a little bit of a blue tint. Oh, here we go. There. Okay, so this is the blue tint. Now, when you look at this in this form, people look at this and say, okay, your eye color is blue. Now, I have a photograph like this that I was looking for. I couldn't find it right away, of me with another painted face like a spider web from last year's Halloween show. Oh, I do have maybe this I could show. Let me see, where did it go? Oh, that's not it. That's not it. Okay, where'd it go? Now I'm not showing you anything. Let me just look myself so I'm not embarrassing myself. Oh, I downloaded it. Okay. Now you won't be able to really see my eye color in this, but I'm trying to make a point. And the point will be this. Okay, yeah. So this is last year's show. As this sort of haunted ghoul. And it looks better, the makeup looks better up close. Now, when you look at these eyes, they are, I am told, green. So people say, you have the most beautiful blue eyes. And then the next day people say, you have the most beautiful green eyes. And people say, well, what color are your eyes? And I say, I don't know. I've always been told that they were hazel. So I smartened up one day, and when I was at the eye doctor, a retina doctor, looking deep into my eyes, I asked him, I said, if you were to tell me what color my eyes are, what color would you say? And he said, you're very matter-of-factly, your eyes are gray. I said, gray? I've never heard of such a thing. Who has gray eyes? He said, some people do. And you do. And I didn't have my contacts on and all that. So I said, is that why some people say you have green eyes? Some people say you have blue eyes. Remember, like that dress? Is the dress black and blue? Or is the dress gold and white? Who knows? And he said, yes. He said, your eyes pick up the color you're wearing, and that becomes your color of the day. And then he said something really interesting, which is the criminal part of it. He said, people, when they get passionate, more angry than loving with people who have gray eyes, the eye can change color. It can go from a gray to an actual green momentarily while the anger is flushing in your body. The green-eyed monster, right? Jealousy, rage, and then it will go back to normal. And I said, well, that's interesting. I could use that if I had a criminal career. And he looked at me like, what do you mean criminal career? And I said, well, if you were writing a story, a murder story, and a person has gray eyes and commits a murder, and all the witnesses said that man had green eyes. Your Honor, I take the witness stand. I take off my sunglasses to show you my eyes are in fact gray and not green. I am innocent. And then I guess, opposing counsel would go and poke you with a stick to, like the Hulk, get you all upset, and your eyes turn green in front of the jury pool, and you're convicted based on eye color alone. Great story, right? So speaking of dramatic things, now we're going to have a conversation about a man who just died. Very interesting guy, complicated, complex, important. And I have to say, the whole thing's just a little strange. Now, my friend and teacher at Columbia University in the city of New York was Howard Stein. Howard was a genius guy, got his PhD from Iowa, in the Iowa Writers Program, I believe. And that's where he taught for many years. Then he went to Yale and taught playwriting there under the chairmanship of Bob Brustein, who just died, right? And then something happened that Howard never really talked about. He had a quiet respect for Brustein, But he really wouldn't talk about him or tell stories about him, and Howard told stories about everybody. But Bobby would just, kind of mention and let it go. But something happened, and Howard left Yale. And why would you ever leave Yale unless something happened? And eventually Howard landed in Texas. Now, a New York Jew in Texas running a theater program was doomed from the beginning. And Howard knew that. And so he went there anyway because he needed a job. And it was a good school with a good reputation. But as a New York Jew, he didn't fit. And the example is people in the South, in Texas, tend to be very friendly, like to hang out, right? And so people who were donors to the school would show up in his office, knock on his door and say, "Hey, Howard, can you give us a tour of the theater?" And Howard would say, as if he were still living in New York, "If you want a tour of the theater, go do it yourself. I'm busy." And that was very confrontational. They were very unhappy with him and he with them. And then there was the issue of treats. That when people would show up to an event, to a tour, they would want refreshments after. They wanted coffee and cookies and cake. And they would ask Howard, "Where is our coffee and cookies and cake?" And Howard Stein, the Jew from New York, would say to these people in Texas, "If you want a snack, bring it with you. I don't have snacks." And he would sort of, shout it that way. Very offended, very offensive. I come from the Midwest, Nebraska. We don't like Oklahoma. We don't like Texas. But even I understand that if you're going to, have people over, you're going to show them around a little bit, you have to go with them. And if it's like an event, where you're inviting them to come over, they're going to expect to want to eat or drink something. New York, not so much. Theater people in the Midwest, you go in early, you do your show, the show's done, you hang out, do stuff. It's not that way in New York. Everybody's busy, everybody's friendly, but I'm busy. So you go there, you do your rehearsal, and the second they say we're done, everybody scatters. Used to sit around and, do notes afterward. Not in New York. In New York, we do notes in the morning. Notes, next time I see you, right now, go. And nobody hangs out. There's no theater kids, no theater group. It's a job. Even if you're a student, it's a job. You show up, you do it, and you go home, and you don't hang out. So Howard was then at Texas, very unhappy. He said, "I've got to get out of here. I got to get any way possible. I'll take an administrative job." He was calling all of his friends and contacts in New York on the East Coast saying, I cannot stay in Texas. I am a New York Jew in Texas. I have to get out. I don't fit. And his wife was surprisingly doing really well in Texas. I believe she got a real estate license and was selling and making a lot of money. And he said, "Darling, I love you, but I got to get out of here." And he did. And he landed at SUNY Purchase, State University, New York Purchase. They have a very passionate theater program there. A lot of money from, meow, meow, PepsiCo. So PepsiCo is Purchase, New York. That's where everything Pepsi lands. So they give a lot of money to the university, and so they have very nice facilities. And Howard was there for a long while. And then he finally got to Columbia, where he became the chair of the Department of Theater. And it's wonderful to have a playwright as the head of a program, because the word comes first. And so we did. So he brought me to New York, gave me a presidential scholarship for a couple of years, and we made history. And I'm here talking to you today. So now we get into a little bit of the history of Bob Brustein, a man who Howard would not really talk a lot about. And that's interesting to me. So there were a lot of conflicted feelings going on. So most people in the world, even in the theater world, don't know who Bob is. They didn't know who Bob is. Now, if you were especially in the Ivy League, East Coast, you knew Bob. Bob was very important, very powerful, very smart. And the sense that I had, I never met the man, is that he was not well liked. And I specifically said it that way because if you're a fan of the theater and Death of a Salesman, you know the line from Willie Loman. He was liked, but he wasn't well liked. Not a distinction without a difference. So Bob Brustein, passionate force, nonprofit theater, is dead at 96. Howard died at the age of 91. So Brustein, a little older, lived longer, okay? Critic, dramatist himself, he started repertory companies at Yale and Harvard and fiercely defended the art form, even if it meant feuding with playwrights, which is very, very interesting because who was our best friend? Howard Stein. What was Howard Stein? A playwright. Uh-oh. But at Yale, Bob ran the theater and Howard and the acting program, and Howard ran the playwriting program. So here's how the New York Times begins the obituary. Bob Brustein, an erudite and contentious advocate for profit-indifferent theater, in the service of which he wore many hats, critic, theater, producer, director, playwright, and even actor, died on Sunday, recent Sunday, at his home in Cambridge, Mass. He was 96. Mr. Brustein was a passionate defender of the resident nonprofit theaters whose ranks expanded across the United States in the last 20th century. It's a very interesting movement, and lots of books have been written about it. There's not just Broadway anymore or off-Broadway. There are now very, very powerful regional theaters, and I worked at one called Arena Stage in Washington, D.C. when I first left Nebraska. And it was a powerhouse. They were one of the first theater companies that had regular people who were actors who were paid a living wage, and their job was to act in plays as part of a repertory company. That's the ideal, but not very many theaters were doing that back in the 60s and 70s because they didn't have any money. But Arena Stage said a long time ago, under Zelda Fish-Ambler, we are going to have a group of actors, and all of these groups of actors are going to be full-time, paid benefits, and they're going to act in every show we have. Really wonderful. And they made a lot of money. He was perpetually concerned, Brustein was, that they not be corrupted by commercial interest. The Broadway mega hit A Chorus Line, in one instance, originally produced in 1975 by Joe Papp at the Public Theater in New York, had made it clear that a hit show could funnel many years of economic fuel back to the source. The basic aim of commercial theater is to make a profit, Bob Brustein said in an interview in 1990. The basic aim of non-commercial theater in its ideal form is to create the condition whereby works of art can be known. And I don't think those are compatible aims. Now, that's very interesting because Bob produced a lot of work specifically for his theater companies at a university that would then go on to great success on Broadway and funnel money back as the theater of origin back to the Brustein Company. A public intellectual and a supporter of the arts, Mr. Brustein delivered options that were often respectfully received, but that just as often incited exasperation and outrage. Theater people, after all, are not especially fond of being called sellouts. When Frank Rich left his post as chief drama critic for the Times in 1994, his valedictory essay singled out Mr. Brustein. I rarely had ugly confrontations with anyone in the theater, and my mail from theater people, even at its angriest, was civilized. Frank Rich wrote, in 13 years, the few significant exceptions invariably involved Bob Brustein. And to that I say, hallelujah, Bob. Now, this is probably the most famous incident. As a fervent supporter, as he was of great playwrights and playwriting, Brustein was unafraid, maybe even eager, to confront the biggest names in the theater. In 1984, Samuel Beckett, that Samuel Beckett, threatened legal action to halt an American repertory theater production of his bleakly apocalyptic play, Endgame. And I love that play. It's very sparse, it's very specific in dialogue and stage direction. However, his bleakly apocalyptic play Endgame, accusing the director of taking intolerable liberties with his stage directions. The set did not conform to his description, the production added music where none was called for, and he felt that the casting of black actors in crucial roles added a racial element that he had not intended. Now, I happen to agree with Samuel Beckett. Look, it's my play. I wrote it this way. This is not open for your interpretation, especially while I'm alive. And I'm saying, please don't do that to my play. And they do it anyway. Bob Brustein took the position that productions confined solely to the playwright's vision violated the creative license of other artists. Remember Howard Stein was a playwright. And more to the point, contributed to the theater's growing stagnant or stale. Backing the director, Joanne Akalitis, and refusing to shut down the production, because that's what Beckett wanted. Look, I'm pulling the rights for you to do my show. Mr. Brustein eventually reached a compromise with the playwright that allowed the show to go on. This is where it gets even more interesting. Under the agreement, a statement by Samuel Beckett himself appeared in the playbill saying, in part, my play requires an empty room and 2 small windows. The American repertory theater production, which dismisses my directions, is a complete parody of the play as conceived by me, Samuel Beckett, the playwright. And though he never saw the production, he also added that anybody who cares for the work couldn't fail to be disgusted by this. A rejoinder by Mr. Brustein was included as well. To threaten any deviations from a purist rendering of this or any other play, he wrote, to insist on strict adherence to each parenthesis of the published text, not only robs collaborating artists of their interpretive freedom, but threatens to turn the theater into a waxworks. I mean, that is absolutely insane. So how would you like to work as a playwright? You have a vision, it's your vision, and you have a director like this who says, that's not your vision, that's not what you mean. I am a director. I am Bob Brustein. I know better than Samuel Beckett. I know better than these undergraduate playwrights and the likes of Howard Stein, who think the playwright is all. That's what's going on. Writing in The New Republic in 1990, Mr. Brustein, then at the American Repertory Theater, criticized the Yale Rep production of August Wilson's drama, The Piano Lesson, because Brustein was at Yale, got let go, and went to Harvard and started the theater company there. Interesting, right? The Piano Lesson, which opened in 1987, traveled to nonprofit theaters around the country in a calculated pre-Broadway tour during which changes were made and opened on Broadway in 1990 after shortly winning a Pulitzer Prize. Though he acknowledged and regretted, he said, that the American Repertory Theater had fostered plays that evolved into Broadway productions, including Grown Ups and Night Mother, Brustein objected to what he called the use of sequential nonprofit institutions as launching pads and tryout franchises for the development of Broadway products and the enrichment of artistic personnel. There's Bob. Interesting, right? And then he had a feud with August Wilson over the piano lesson. Their feud played out in the pages of the New Republic and American Theater magazine, reached a climax in '97 with an extraordinary public debate in front of a sold-out house at Town Hall in Midtown Manhattan. Mr. Wilson argued for a robust black theater movement involving black playwrights writing on black themes and black artists directing and performing the work. Mr. Brustein declared the idea separatist and narrow. Never is it suggested that playwrights like Mamet or McNally are limiting themselves to whiteness, Mr. Wilson argued. The idea that we are trying to escape from the ghetto of black culture is insulting. Brustein, who invoked the Aristotelian ideal of drama as revelatory of the workings of the human soul, which has no color, reached this conclusion, as did many in attendance, that nothing was decided. I come away confirmed in my conviction that drama is the opposition of two ideas, Brustein said, so I think we have provided drama, if not enlightenment. And it goes on about his history, teaching at Yale, and moving on. It's very interesting. I will put a link to this biography in our Discord server. There's Bob in 2012. Nice photograph. So this is really a living legend, fought with everybody, not a bad thing, always confrontational, always looking at you, around you, for you. And I cannot imagine Brustein and Howard working together and just not exploding at every moment. Then that can create really wonderful, interesting, fantastic things, but it can also, really wear on you when you go home at night. And it's like, boy, you don't know the day I had. We had a lot of arguing. We had a lot of people all over us. It was a rough day. So sometimes when that happens, Howard goes to Texas. Bob goes to Harvard. Did Howard want to go to Harvard with Bob? Did Bob ask Howard to go to Harvard? Doesn't matter. Didn't happen. Howard went from Texas to Purchase to Columbia University in the city of New York, back to the Ivy League to have his own department, his own chairmanship. He was not under the guidance or the heartbreak of anyone else but himself. And that is what Howard Stein always believed in. Keep your life in your hands. Don't put your life in the hands of others. Well, that's our show. Had a wonderful day talking about Janna Marie Sweetheart and Howard and Bob and all the rest. Take care, be well. You know where to find me if you need me. Keep me informed. I want to know what's up. I'm David Boles, and this has been Boles.tv, Boles.television. Thank you. Be well. I'll see you soon.